in the field in which I work in, we are a nonprofit organization, and our job is to go into the community and find out what the needs are, and then establish some kind of communication or network so that we can figure out how we're going to make things happen. So we are considered the movers and the shakers in our county. So for example, if Ms. Bartlett says to me, you know, I really need new books for the library, and it's not in my budget, I don't know what to do, can you help? Then what I would do is get on the internet and research what kind of grants are out there, or network with other counties to see what their libraries are doing to determine how I can go about finding funding for her to buy new books. So we do that in a lot of different scopes of work with our agencies, from substance abuse to youth development to, oh my God, just so many things. But I'm not going to steal the thunder. I'm going to let my partners go ahead and share with you what they all do. We have Rebecca Vance for Randolph County, Elizabeth Shahan, Harrison County, April Miller, who came all the way from Tucker County, and Linda Watson from Barber County. Now, a lot of us have a youth team, or we're in the process of developing one, so we work a lot with kids in different fields. Do you want to go ahead and chime in, Rebecca?
I guess my part comes in largely because of the youth aspect. It's been 5-6 years since we've had a youth team. My youth team through National Youth Leadership started working on prescription drug abuse because they seen that was a huge need within Randolph County. And they kind of took it and ran with it after we taught them what all to learn about, what all they needed to know. And I have one standout student that came out of that is now, she's a trainer nationally. She travels around with Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America and trains large groups, probably 400 or 500 teenagers at a time, on how to identify problems within your community, what resources you need to leverage and get together to make things happen. So Becky does a lot of that. And we've been to California, we've been to Texas. She'll be getting ready to go to Washington, D.C., and then we'll go to Florida in the summer. Another huge thing as far as I think Randolph County's done, well, two. One, we're 2011 recipient of the 100 Best Communities for Youth. And the other one is we hold the nation's first tobacco prevention and breast cancer awareness barn. We have a huge, great big huge pink barn, and I have pictures of it here somewhere. So we have a big pink barn that has the ribbon on it for breast cancer awareness, and then on the side of it, it has the 1-800-QUIT line to quit smoking and use tobacco. And she has a picture of it back there. And then we'll pass it on. Let's see if you can want this one. I'll go to Elizabeth.
Well, if you look at all of us, we've all partnered and participated in the National Youth Leadership Initiative. I'm Elizabeth Shahan. I'm from Harrison County, so I'm just up the road a little ways. We all participated in that. We all brought youth into our substance abuse prevention coalitions. The whole point of that whole process was we all have substance abuse prevention coalitions in our counties, and we had this huge problem with our adults, and that kept saying, oh, well, it's the youth's problem. The youth have problems with substance abuse. The youth do underage drinking. The youth are the ones who abuse drugs, and this, that, and the other. And we realized that that's a huge problem because adults are saying it's your all's problem. And you guys look at us and say, wait a minute, yeah, it kind of is our problem, but if the adults keep saying, hey, it's your problem, but they're not going to do anything about it. So what we decided was our adults aren't moving forward. They're not doing anything. They just want to blame somebody else about it. So, hey, what are we going to do? Well, we go to kids, and kids kept saying, hey, you could do this, 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 and this. Harrison County, we had an underage drinking town hall forum, where we brought our kids to the presenting to our community that said, hey, underage drinking is a problem in our community. Here's how it affects us. Here's what we want to do about it, and here's how things can be changed on the legislative level. So we went through that whole process, and when you as youth start telling adults what the problems are and what you think you can do to solve it, it makes a huge difference. It gets the adults re-energized to say, okay, well, tell us what we need to do. And it's kind of happened in Harrison County with our coalition. We get new kids every year. What generation are you on? Six. I think we're on 4 generations of kids that have just started coming through the process. In Harrison County right now, the kids are working on We just completed a substance abuse prevention awareness walk with our United Methodist Church Charge, and we walked through Clarksburg up to the Methodist Church, where the youth led a conversation with youth to talk about what the problems are in our communities. And that's kind of the stuff we do. We participate in Red Ribbon, where some of our kids, some of the youth on our coalition will go to the like elementary schools and do the Red Ribbon activities. I saw one of your Red Ribbon awareness flyers back there. So where high school kids will go in and talk to elementary school kids. Does anybody know why that might be important? Any ideas? Look, class participation. It's important because your young kids in elementary school and middle school look up to you. So since they look up to you, 90% of kids don't use drugs or alcohol. There's only a 10% number who engage in risky behavior under using substances and alcohol. So the majority of this class, the majority of you guys sitting in here don't use drugs or alcohol. That's important because adults, we think y'all do. That's not fair. We label everyone else. So we get kids who say, no, I'm willing to stand up and say, I don't use drugs or alcohol, and I want to teach another kid to do the same. So we have our high school kids go and talk to our elementary school kids. We do a lot of other different things. My job is basically to manage the money, to make sure that if we don't have money and we need money, then I can go find it, and then to hand that money off to people when they say, hey, we want to use it for this project. I give it to the people that do the project. That's just what my job is. You guys want to highlight on what you guys do? Tucker, Barbara?
Tucker County is a little bit different than the other counties, I think. We've had our FRN for almost 20 years now, over 20 years. And our primary focus is on families with little kids. And a lot of the students that we work with now, we actually had in play groups or different things when they were toddlers, 3 years old. So our programming focuses with substance abuse prevention and other prevention activities on parents with little kids. And like I said, a lot of the kids that we have with children, we had as playgroup families. So they're really familiar with our programming. But other than that, we pretty much do the same things as Rebecca and Elizabeth and Linda. So.
No, there's nothing left. They've said it all. But our FRN's been around for 20 years too. And I think just to give an overview, what FRNs primarily do is what Waleska said in the beginning, is we completely, constantly access the community to see what the problems are, and then we work on those problems. We then mobilize, which means we try to get you to help us. So because one person can't do it alone, but with the support of the community, we can get a long way. We do a lot with substance abuse. We do a lot with early childhood. We do tobacco prevention. We're working diligently to try to help get this affordable health care process up and running in our county. The Energy Express summer reading programs, youth literacy, adult literacy, NA meetings, AA, you name it, there's an FRN footprint on it somewhere. So that's just an overview of what all of us do.
We're waiting on one more, but we're going to go ahead and start so that you guys have time to ask questions. You guys can have a seat.
Sure.
Making sure they know they're not taking it. Next one is. We have Delegate Tim Manchin. We have Delegate Manypenny and Conrad Lucas. And I'm going to let you, they're going to give it just a little intro about who they are. Do you have that written down? Would you like to share that before we start?
Conrad Lucas, he served as an aide for Shelley Capito. Politically, he previously served as the general counsel to the West Virginia Republican Party and as chairman of the W.E. Young Republican. Mike Manypenny, Democratic member of the West Virginia House of Delegates. Representing District 49, he was first elected in the chamber in 2008. Republican W State Senator from the 14th District, representing part or all of the following counties: Barber, Grant, Mineral, Mongolia, Preston, Taylor, and Beaver County. He was elected in 2006.
And then there's Tim Manchin. I'm the fill-in for Speaker Miley, who's the Speaker of the House. I think he was here Friday, and there was some little mix-up, and so he had hoped to be able to be back today, but was unable to because of that scheduling, and asked me to fill in. So I'm here to take his place. I serve as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and I'm a delegate from Marion County, the 50th. Delegate Manypenny is your delegate here in Taylor County. So, and I've been serving since 2003, and I practice law for a living.
Sure. Most of the kids in the school carry drugs, whether it's with them or it's in the parking lot or the school property.
Can you say it louder, please?
Kids in the school are carrying drugs, whether it's on property or in their cars or with them. My question is there, in your opinion, what do you think about this for in school? And if you know if any plans are going to happen in the near future about this issue?
Who?
Anyone can answer it now.
Well, we've been working hard to try to fight substance abuse across the state of West Virginia. And one area that we haven't focused hard enough on is our schools. And some schools I know have a program where they test students that are in extracurricular activities such as football, soccer, and other sports. I wouldn't be opposed to looking into developing some legislation that would require random drug testing for students as well as teachers, and to even the playing field, elected officials, just to try and curb the substance abuse problem and students having drugs on grounds or using them. And it's a threefold program you need to look at: diversion, prevention, and treatment. And if a student is found using drugs, instead of having a zero tolerance policy, I think we need to make sure that they get counseling and treatment, because we don't want them to fall behind in their studies, but we do want to make sure that they're not abusing drugs. So if they get caught, I think they need to go through treatment and counseling further.
You want to take a shot down, Conrad?
I think you said it pretty well. I think we agree. We agree on that. You're talking about med students, Karen. Did you mean you are talking about illegal drugs, right? Or did you mean just prescription?
Prescription.
Oh, okay. So you mean Tylenol too, or is there anything you might be carrying around?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, when it comes to say illegal drugs, I think I agree with what Delegate Manypenny said on the approaches that should come about. When it comes to the legal stuff, the stuff that you've been prescribed, penicillin or whatever a doctor may have given you. I know that different schools have different policies on that, and I don't know, I'm not familiar with what Taylor County's policy would be, but one thing that I am opposed to would be the zero tolerance policies. I think that a lot of schools and school districts throughout the country have got to realize that zero tolerance means, unfortunately, zero tolerance. It sometimes if someone doesn't have the intent to break the law, that they are guilty, so to speak, without having any chance to explain themselves. So I'm not sure what the policy is here in Taylor County, but if it is a zero tolerance policy, I think that's something that doesn't work to the students' benefit.
Yeah, I guess briefly, I pretty much agree with most of what's been said, but for you all, particularly in terms of illegal drugs, I think that I think that we need to do a little more in terms of education, and you all need to do a little more in terms of listening. Until you all understand that your health is the most precious thing that you have, and most of you don't believe that because you haven't been unhealthy. But your health is the most precious thing that you have, and drug use, illegal drug use in particular, is bad for your health. And until you all come to understand that, I'm not sure that we'll eliminate illegal drug use because they're fun. You know, people enjoy them. But the bottom line is that they're bad for you. They're bad for society because even though maybe you're not selling, the fact that you buy it from somebody means that there is an illegal activity going on. And usually those people who are selling are committing other crimes in terms of buying larger quantities, or they're stealing for their drugs, or they're doing other things. So what you do is you perpetuate a very bad system when you're participating in those kinds of activities. So, but other than that, I think it's, I'm opposed to zero tolerance on just about anything, simply because, certainly at your age anyway, let's put it that way. So, you have another question for us?
Well, there, in recent news, the jails are supposedly overfilling, and they have too many prisoners, not enough cells. My theory is there are too many laws, like people are being arrested on like the seatbelt law, and there aren't enough jails due to insufficient funding. What does the legislature plan on doing with that issue?
Well, first of all, I'll say that I don't think that anybody is in jail for a seatbelt violation.
I'm just saying that's what all
Well, I appreciate that. And what are we doing? I'll just point out to you what we have done. Last year we passed legislation that recognized that a lot of folks who are in jail are there for drug-related crimes. Maybe it's not a drug possession crime, or it's a intent to deliver type of crime, but they're there because they're involved in the use of drugs, which is causing them to get into other kinds of illegal activities, stealing and those sorts of things. And unfortunately, what our system has not done a very good job of is treating these problems while people are in prison or in jail. And we've done even a worse job of following up and providing them with assistance to try to stay away from those activities once they get out. So part of what we passed was a bill that's designed to provide more treatment options. It's also designed to provide more supervision after they get out of jail by adding that on in certain cases. In certain cases it can be in lieu of the last few months of jail. But to then follow up with them and make sure that over a period of 2, 4, 6 months that they're not getting back into those kinds of habits. Helping them get jobs, helping them find housing, helping them do things that will keep them away from those activities. And we've already done that. We expect that to save, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of, I can't remember the yearly number, but I do know that we expected that over time it would keep us from having to build about a $320 million prison, which is what we're starting to stare at right now because of our overcrowding. You know, certainly those certain individuals are sometimes sent to jail where perhaps community service and other things would be better choices in terms of rehabilitation. And that's another thing that's a piece of this puzzle that we've worked on as well.
I'd like to expand on what Delegate Manchin had reiterated about trying to work on treating people instead of incarcerating people. Some of the statistics out there show that 80% of the people in prison are in there directly or indirectly due to substance abuse issues. We also spend nearly $2 billion on direct and indirect costs for substance abuse across the state. And by trying to treat these people with these substance abuse problems rather than incarcerate them is going to go a long way in reducing the prison overpopulation. And for every statistic, there was a study done that shows statistically that for every dollar we invest in diversion, prevention, and treatment gives us a $21 return on investment. So therefore, by implementing better prevention programs in the schools, diversion programs in the homes, by educating parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters about keeping their medicine locked up so young people don't get a hold of them, and then treating people with the disease is really the solution to the problem.
I always hate to agree with the people across the aisle here, guys, but I think they summed it up pretty well. I don't think that's what I think they want. I think they might want us to fight today to show something, but I think these two gentlemen summed it up very well.
We'll change elbow.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, of course, they're in the legislature. They've had a chance to address the issue head on.
I'll let you go first on the
Next one? All right. I'll be controversial next time. I think they summed it up very well. I think the legislature has done a good job of addressing prison overcrowding, as you know, is a big, could potentially lead to big expenses for the state. And the statistics, 80% of folks are in there due to substance abuse. And that's the second drug-related question we've had here. Obviously, that's something on your all's minds. So I think the legislature's done a good job of looking at the future on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Next. Those of you who need to go to 7th period, so one of you, okay.
Education is a big part of making the future better. I think how public schools perform reflects how the education is developed. Some public schools are now interested in reaching state goals. They are now putting plans to help with the improving education and stateside. How are new policies going about this?
Well, yeah, I'll talk a little bit about education, and of course the legislators can weigh in on some more specific stuff. Last year in the state legislature, the governor proposed a very large education reform package, which I think was a great thing. It's, as you know, education it's an issue not just in Taylor County but everywhere, because it's the strength of the education system leads to the strength for everything. Strong education keeps people off of drugs. It gets jobs, helps the economy, all up and down the line. Some stuff, some federal stuff that you'll hear talk about. This is an issue a lot of times where Republicans and Democrats will disagree. It hasn't affected us in West Virginia, but say issues of school choice and school vouchers, meaning in big cities. And one of the reasons it hasn't really hit here is because we're pretty much a rural state. Is if they're failing schools in one part of, say, a city, like New York City, this is common, failing, then a parent would have a choice to take a voucher to send the student to a private school in some cases. And that's been controversial. So that's something that where a lot of nationally Republicans and Democrats disagree on a lot, but hasn't really been an issue here in West Virginia. But it's a chance for parents and students to get out of the failing school system and move to a one that's viewed as stronger. But in terms of standards and goals, I think that the legislation proposed by the governor that these guys helped work on last year started off as a good thing to help raise standards. And my mom is a school superintendent in Lincoln County, which has been really interesting to watch her go through that process. They were a really failing system for a long time, and the state took control. And they just got control back a year and a half ago because of setting some standards higher and working towards it. But there's a lot that's been discussed in West Virginia on the importance of our community and technical colleges, and then of course, our four-year institutions, particularly community technical colleges. You all probably hear a lot about oil and gas drilling up here, and it's the community technical colleges that I think will play a role in training our workforce to be part of that. But anyway, these guys will talk more about some of the specific legislation related to that, but standards are important.
One of the things that we're looking at focusing on is expanding vocational education throughout the schools. A lot of students aren't interested or wanting to get prepared to go to college, or they can't afford to go to college. Therefore, there's a lot of jobs out there that technical education could help, get jobs for these young people when they get out of school. By expanding vocational education even into the middle school and getting children and the young people and then the high school students more prepared for going out into the society and trying to find a job is probably one of the most important things that will be probably. Right now there's a big influx of industry for oil and gas, and we have a new coal mine facility here in Taylor County, and there's more industry starting to move into West Virginia where we'll need trained individuals to perform these jobs.
Thank you. I would certainly echo Delegate Manypenny's comments, and have for a long time thought that we need to have a little better option while you're still in high school in terms of those who might want to make an early decision that you don't want to try to go to college, that it may not be the thing for you, but that you do want to receive training in a skill and a vocation so that when you get out of school, you're ready to go to work. And I think we have spent too much time making every one of you believe that you ought to go to college, and that if you don't want to go to college, that somehow you're second rate or second class, or you're not as smart. Let me tell you, there are a lot of great jobs out there that need filled. We have a lot of employers, they talk about we need jobs. Well, I can tell you right now, my last 3 or 4 conversations with employers have all said, we need qualified people to work. We've got jobs for them. We can't find students, we can't find graduates who are capable of working and who are trained to do these jobs. And so we've got to do a little better job of identifying what needs, what skills they need, and to get you all ready for that. The second, and one of my real pet peeves, and has been for quite some time, I think that we've gotten to the point where we're spending entirely too much money on administration and education, particularly in public education. We spend in the top 10 in the country in per capita spending, and yet our teachers are in the bottom 10 of being paid. And to me, that's a reflection that we are spending too much money on administration, too many superintendents, too many assistants, and too much bureaucracy at the top. We really need to find a way, we're looking for a way right now to limit that so that we put more money into the classrooms, reduce the size of classes so that teachers can give you more attention, individual attention. So those are my basic thoughts in terms of what we need to do in education.
Prisons and jails are very important when it comes to the safety of both the state and the county. They're in place to detain those individuals who have committed a crime. Due to the increased arrest rate, I know that they are very important to our daily society. I know that the county commission is responsible for funding jails, and the state is responsible for funding prisons. Can you compare and contrast the funding of jails to that of funding of prisons?
Well, that's a pretty good, pretty tough question, but let me see if I can answer that. In contrast, we've got a problem where we've got nearly 2,000 prisoners that should be in the state prisons instead of the regional jails. And in fact, one of the issues is that that's one of the things that's propping up the regional jails and helping to keep them solvent, because they're getting more income for less space because they're housing more prisoners than what they're supposed to. Which has kept the price for the counties down and kept it from escalating. So it has kept, by economies of scale, it has helped the counties by reducing the cost of regional jail costs per prisoner, because the state is helping to pay some of those overhead costs. I don't recall what the cost per prisoner is. However, we do need to get the prison overpopulation under control. And unfortunately, when we do, the costs for the regional jails per prisoner will probably go up for the counties. However, by trying to reform some of the laws that we have on the books and reducing the prison time for nonviolent, non-sexual crimes may help bring down the prison population even for the regional jails and help reduce the cost of the counties as well as the state. I don't know if that was a good enough answer, but I did my best.
Mike,
Yes.
we just announced at County Commission last Tuesday night, we're paying $48.25 per prisoner per day in Taylor County.
It wasn't too long ago we were paying 36. So the price is going up, but it has been kept down because of the overpopulation of the regional jails.
If the question was, can you compare and contrast the funding of the state system with the county system, the quick answer for me is I cannot. So I'm not sure if the structure's on that whatsoever. So that sounds good to me, Mike.
Yeah. Just so that you understood, and I think Mike did a good job of explaining, but regional jails are run by the counties. And they have these regional jails so that everybody contributes to them, all the different counties. Looks like we lost part of our classroom. Are we done?
No,
Okay.
switching off my world history classes, and just a couple of the, like 5 of the AP Gov students have to go, and they'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Do you want
Sure.
these until we come back?
Looking at in the next few years.
All right, I believe that medical marijuana can help out many West Virginians, and I also believe that there's money to be made off of the taxation. And do you believe that marijuana is legal for medicinal purpose?
Yeah, I think there's a place for medical marijuana. I have some concerns about what I have seen in some states where I think it was abused. The development of the medical marijuana system led to just whole-scale legalization. I'm not there, but there are a number of, I've had experience with friends who've had cancer, and quite frankly, all the drugs that they were giving them just made them sicker or had lots of side effects, whereas medical marijuana seemed to improve their situation and helped with their nausea and their appetite and some other issues. It's a difficult subject for the legislature to tackle, and that's because a lot of older folks don't have as open a mind about that, and they're concerned about it. We're just all we're doing is legalizing a drug, and I mean, we give far worse drugs to people than marijuana. I mean, Dilaudid, there are Xanax, there are a number of medications, of painkillers and those sorts of things that are far more dangerous and far more injurious to people's health than marijuana would ever be. So you have to compare it. But from a political standpoint, it's very difficult because a lot of voters, a lot of folks don't understand the issues that well. And quite frankly, politics gets in the way because we worried if somebody votes for medical marijuana, they can be perceived as being in favor of drug usage and of legalizing marijuana, and other people who are running against them, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, either side, would use that to defeat that purpose in certain areas of the state. Other areas it may not be as damaging politically. So those are some of my thoughts. I think the day is coming when we're going to have that discussion. We're getting closer. We've studied a little bit. Delegate Manypenny has been on the front end of looking at these issues and trying to figure out how to do it the right way. And I'm sure I think he's had some interim meetings even lately that have discussed those. I didn't get to sit in on those, but I just think we need to do it the right way, and I think that sooner or later we're gonna come to that. So
It all comes down to the issue of compassion and knowing there's a lot of people out there with chronic ailments that could be treated with this that are not being treated effectively with traditional prescription medicines. Some of the patients, such as post-traumatic stress disorder patients, there really isn't any medicines out there as of yet that has been effective in treating post-traumatic stress disorder, especially for our veterans who have come back from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. In fact, several years ago, I was contacted by some patients that were suffering from cancer here in Taylor County, and they asked me to present this to the legislature. And after researching and seeing that there's been a lot of studies across the world, a lot of them have been in Israel, where they have legalized marijuana there, and leading universities such as the University of Madrid in Spain, some of the universities in California and around the world have done some remarkable research on seeing how effective or ineffective marijuana would be, and it's amazing how effective it is for many, many ailments. In West Virginia, we have one of the highest rates of disabled people with chronic ailments in the country. And by legalizing, let's put it this way, by allowing a doctor to recommend marijuana to a patient is basically all it is, and for 21 years and older, and mainly to make sure that our young people don't get a hold of this, because some of the studies that have been done show that in the developing mind, marijuana disrupts the development of the mind. And young people that participate in the use of marijuana have one of the highest rates of mental illness in the country. So we really need to make sure this is after someone has matured, except for in extreme cases, and I don't know if anybody saw the Sanjay Gupta show on CNN, where the little girl that had epilepsy had 300 seizures a week, after being treated with a cannabis oil, went down to 1 seizure a week. So it can be a life-saving mechanism where many, and this little girl I think was on 17 different medicines. So it can be a life-saving medicine as well as a dangerous medicine, just like anything. Delegate Manchin was talking about the prescription drug abuse problems, where young people don't realize the negative effects that prescription drugs can have on the body because you've been healthy all your lives. But what the negative impact is on this, you have to be educated and learn and understand that this is a medicine. This isn't something you should be out using for recreation. And therefore, I believe that we do need to expand the education across the board for our seniors to realize that this is a medicine, as well as our young people. But we don't want to not move forward. This used to be a medicine from the 1800s up until almost 1940. The American Medical Association fought to keep it legal. However, there were some powers to be that fought it and made it illegal. And therefore, I mean, it's already been a proven medicine from over 100 years ago. So therefore, I think that we need to push forward and try to get it legalized for the people with chronic ailments, and also to make sure that our young people are safe.
I'm opposed, and I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. Largely because the best thing about the United States is that we have 50 states where you can experiment, different laboratories on different policies and different approaches to different things. And there has yet to be a state in the U.S. which has gone that route where it hasn't led to further problems, further substance abuse, and further issues involving misuse of what was probably started off as a well-intended purpose. So until there's a means for that, I don't think it's something we should try in West Virginia, because it has been in existence largely on the West Coast for a long time. Further, if we're talking about brain development, a recent study by the Harvard School of Public Health says the brain doesn't fully complete its development until 28 years old. So anything prior to that would only interfere with with proper cognitive development. I don't think that's something that we as a society should be involved with. Also, knowing that this does lead to further legalization and further substance abuse, I believe that regardless of whatever reasons made marijuana illegal in the first place, that it is an arbitrary line, but the line was drawn. And it's something where we should stick with that line, or else we can legalize lots of other things based on any justification that we want to. Cocaine makes people feel good, so let's legalize it. That's the rationale, and that's why we're opposed to it.
Cocaine is legal.
As a medicine.
As a medicine, okay? And it hasn't necessarily led to all these other things, but anyway, that's.
So you're
neither
arguing
here
that
nor there.
cocaine is a good thing?
I'm pointing out that we've got a lot of drugs out there that are far worse than marijuana that we prescribe for illnesses
We
that
prescribe
do a lot
cocaine.
more harm. Yeah, cocaine
Dennis prescribes
is
cocaine.
used, yeah.
In its current form, at which we snort it, they prescribe heroin as well.
I don't know what the current form is. That's not the
I-
issue. The
I
issue
think that
is
is
the
the
drug
issue.
itself. Anyway, fair enough. There you've got two different sides, game.
Next.
I think that was the best question we've had so far, because we disagree on something.
They've all been good questions.
They have.
Larry, I heard you have some questions.
Based on President Obama's idea of balancing the economy and the environment, shutting down our entire coal fleet would only reduce global average temperatures by roughly 0.03% degrees Fahrenheit. Reducing sea levels by an increase of 0.03 degrees, but less than the thickness of a dime. However, it would eliminate 760,000 good-paying jobs across the U.S. and force 240 million of Americans to ration their electricity use for the first time by eliminating America's most reliable and affordable energy source. My question is, in your opinion, how can you justify decreasing 0.03 degrees Fahrenheit and lowering the sea level by less than the thickness of a dime to eliminating 760,000 jobs and forcing 240 million Americans to ration electricity?
I think it's terrible it's happening. I'm opposed to the Obama administration's approach to the EPA, 100%. It's a direct war on jobs, war on West Virginia, war on coal, war on natural gas. If you look at it as the country, President Obama, who said before he was elected he wants to bankrupt the coal industry, I believe that it's something that we must continue fighting, our legislators in Washington must continue fighting against, is to allow us to mine coal. You know, I'm from southern West Virginia originally. I come from a long line of coal miners, and as I know that there's some increased coal production here in Taylor County, which is great, but it's something where the eyes of the president are turned squarely against the coal industry, and we have to fight against it. If you look at developing countries, or developed 1.5 world countries, if you will, say China, on average, China is building one new coal-fired power plant every week. So therefore, we see that if this increased development because of cheap energy, largely that's mined here in the United States, is helping to develop other nations, it's something we here domestically should absolutely use. Coal in West Virginia powered a nation, and we should continue to do so.
There are a lot of statistics out there, and I've seen other statistics other than what you've presented for us here today that totally indicate the opposite. I do feel for the coal miners, and I wanted to make sure that we continue helping them and to mine coal, but we also need to start moving from a carbon-based society to a green society, using more solar and wind energy, as well as biomass energy, hydro energy. The reason being is, shouldn't we start to look on the side of caution to make sure that global warming or climate change isn't going to affect our society and make the seas rise 20 feet as has been proposed on our shorelines, which would displace millions of people and cost billions of dollars trying to divert the seas. Now, it's a much bigger issue and problem than just these few things. In the event we do try to move away from a carbon society, we need to help our coal miners to transition into a greener based job set, such as building wind turbines and solar energy facilities. In fact, in West Virginia, we have every ingredient we need to build silicon-based solar energy cells. And most of the industry is on the West Coast. So we could develop a whole industry right here in West Virginia to transition those coal miners into a green industry. And there's a lot of other things. We have some of the best wind generation in the country here across the Appalachian Mountains. Why not try to work on developing some of these things rather than just focus on coal? The war on coal was developed by the industry and by the big companies and corporations that are just profiting from the raping and pillaging of our mountaintops. And there's a lot we could do with mountaintop removal sites by putting industry up there, growing industrial hemp, which could be used for downstream industries, textiles, seeds, oils, carbon sequestration. Industrial hemp sequesters 1.36 tons of carbon per ton of fiber produced above ground. It sequesters that in the root mass. So we could even create a carbon trading program with the power companies that where the proposed reductions in carbon emissions have been proposed for, and allow them to continue to burn more coal while developing a new industry. There's a lot of things we can do.
I'm probably somewhere in between these guys on that issue. And I don't know your question. I says, how can you justify it based on this and that? I guess the question is, most of the scientific community believes that we do have a global warming problem, and most of the scientific community believes that carbon is a problem in terms of that global warming. So you have to be concerned about, you don't want to simply wait until after the fact, until we have cataclysmic problems before you start thinking about it and looking at it. I guess I favor an approach that is more balanced, that tries to use coal in an environmentally clean and friendly way. I think that we've been promised that, quite frankly, since the oil embargo, but I have yet to see a president actually put any real money into the program, or Congress to put any money into using coal cleanly or being able to convert it into oil or other types of things that for which it could be used in a better manner. But understand that the present problem that we have right now in the coal industry in West Virginia is not because of the EPA or the president's policies. The problem right now is that we have lost market share to Western coal companies. They're still burning coal out there. They're just not burning our coal. And part of that's because our coal is a lot more expensive. As I've been told by some coal industry officials just recently, some of these new mines that have come on in Illinois, they can ship their coal to West Virginia and get it here delivered, produced and delivered for the same or a lower price than our own West Virginia coal. So that's one of the big problems we got. The second big problem is, and I take issue with Mr. Lucas on this, it is not the most affordable energy source, because natural gas right now is beating coal in terms of price. And that's why you have a move towards natural gas, is because it's cheaper and they're able to burn it more easily. And so there's a lot of pressure on coal from those standpoints, not to mention the last of those, and that is, and that's probably one of the reasons why we have to be planning in this state for a more diversified economy in the future, and that is that globally it's moving in that direction. It's moving against carbon-based fuels. And so we need to be ready for that in terms of diversifying our economy, because it may happen to us no matter what. the United States decides to do, it may be inevitable. So we need to be smart about it. But I think that the present policies have tried to go too far, too fast. That's what I would say, and I'm opposed to them in that respect. But make no mistake about it, without an EPA, the rivers around Cleveland would still be on fire. Now, you all don't remember, but back in the 60s and the 70s, we had pollution to unprecedented levels. We had literally so many chemicals in the waters around Cleveland that the rivers caught on fire and couldn't be put out. So you got to understand that some of those agencies are what have made our environment as good as it is today. And if you get rid of them, then you may lose some of those benefits that we've lived for today, and all of a sudden you may not have fish in the streams anymore. And you may start losing the bears in the woods and the other things that we appreciate as West Virginians. So, thank you. Oh, no, you just want to sit on it. Okay.
There are many aiding systems available for citizens of West Virginia, but there are not as strict requirements on how these are used or utilized. And saying that for the new West Virginia clothing vouchers, you can go to American Eagle and buy a $50 shirt and $50 this and $50 that. And for food stamps, you can go and buy any name brand food you want that's 3 times the price of a great value or something, brand of that food. And my question is, should there be drug testing and stricter requirements for welfare and food stamps and other aiding services and programs?
Well, you know, if you're talking about the drug testing issue, let's talk about that first. And I'm not sure what else you had in there. I guess you were starting to talk about whether or not they're using their food vouchers to buy wisely. Gee, I don't know. How far can you micromanage? I mean, if I had my way, what we would do is we would reform the TANF and food stamp program, which is really through a card now, so that people had to start buying more healthy food, fresh vegetables, things that are good for people's health and will make them healthier in the future. And that's what I would look to for reform right there, and have proposed it. It's not as easy as one would think, but we are looking at some of those things. With regards to, I guess, the drug testing, first of all, there have been a couple of court rulings that have struck down just pure random testing as being unconstitutional. I don't know whether it is or it isn't. I tend to believe that it's probably not. But you know, the issue to me is how you create a program that concentrates on drug problems and help people and improve them. Because it doesn't do any good simply to make criminals out of them. It doesn't do any good to take their children away. You know, the ultimate, people talk about this drug testing, but they never talk about what comes next. Well, what are you going to do if they do test positive? First of all, you got to understand now, single adults without children are already limited to how long they can receive welfare. It's like 1.5 years, if I'm not mistaken. Could be off. Okay, so it's only if you have children to take care of that you can receive these benefits. Well, if they test positive and you take their benefits away, what do you do with the children? Take them out of the home? We're already in the top 10 in the country in the number of kids removed from the home. And it's expensive. It's far more expensive to remove kids from the home. The other factor that's there is that, you know, there's a little bit of a jump to this idea of anybody that has, let's say they've smoked a joint 2 weekends ago and they test positive. Does that really mean that they're not employed because they smoked pot 2 weekends ago. There's a tremendous number of productive people that use recreational drugs. It's not good and it's not right, but there's not a direct link is what I'm trying to tell you. Most of the programs that have been adopted have not been economically successful. And quite frankly, the number of people that they've caught and under these random tests has been very low. It's been a pretty low percentage, and it's questionable whether it's viable. I personally believe that we should start with something that I think is workable and something that will pass constitutional muster. And that is that we look for situations in which children have been neglected or abused by parents. And if there's some reasonable suspicion that maybe that's because of drug use, then in those cases we need to start drug testing, and we need to start with a systematic progression in that drug testing of what we do in terms of consequences each time they test positive, but that the goal should be to try to educate them and get them away from drug use and to eliminate the problem. Also, I think it's appropriate for anybody that's been on welfare, that's been convicted of any kind of drug crime, drug-related crime, to also be tested. Those are things that I think we can start with that can work and do good. And ultimately, anything that we do along those lines needs to try to improve our situation and not simply abandon people and throw them out there to prey on society or to end up in jail, because neither of those are good.
The first part of the question was about getting people to buy healthy foods with food stamps and better stretch the money that they're getting, essentially. Yeah, I think you can micromanage it. One program I think has been very successful at that is WIC. It's the Women and Infant Children program, and it's designed to those who are participants in WIC can only buy very nutritious food. It's restricted. There's certain things you'll see in grocery stores WIC approved, meaning it's good for prenatal purposes and for children during the developmental stages. And I think that taking a closer look at the food stamp program and modeling it closer to WIC would stretch those dollars further for the individuals who are in need of the food vouchers or clothing vouchers, as it may be. So yeah, I think there is a way. It takes some thought, but I think the WIC program has set up a good model for how that could be done, and WIC's been successful for several decades. So I would agree with the point that I think there's a lot of misuse in the food stamp program, but there's a way to fix it so it achieves its goals. In terms of drug testing for benefits, and I'm going to give you two answers, and I'm going to contradict myself because I'm going to wind up agreeing with Manchin, and I don't want to. But quick answer, yes, absolutely. Absolutely should. There should be some form of consequence that goes along with an employer can fire someone and they can randomly test. In many cases, an employer can fire someone for using drugs. So therefore, I believe anyone who's receiving federal assistance should be cut off from that with just as swiftly as an employer can cut it off. But then comes a problem. What happens with these people? What happens with their children? What happens with society? What are the bigger consequences of something that is cut off instantly without warning because of a mistake? Albeit an egregious and a terrible mistake, but then you're dealing with a lot of larger issues that have a bigger impact on society and a bigger impact on children. You know, a lot of what we say deals with children because, unfortunately, infants just can't get up and get jobs and to defend themselves. So I'm going to say I theoretically agree with it. That is, if there is some other means of, I don't want to say developing a safety net or of taking care of the larger societal issues that would be caused with an abrupt cutoff, but people who are much smarter than me will have to come up with what that is. So I like the concept of it, but I just couldn't go with it.
That's a very, very good question, and I agree with parts of both Chairman Lucas and Delegate Manchin. One of the things I've debated with some of my other legislative friends is, can we eliminate sugary and empty calorie foods such as soft drinks and candy, which is still a viable product which can be bought with food stamps. And the thing is that some of these families, that's all they get is food stamps in order to feed their families. And even though they're empty calories, they're calories and they do sustain them. Healthy foods cost a lot more money. And if we are going to try to reduce things like empty calorie foods such as sugars and carbohydrates like potato chips and stuff, then we may have to look at maybe increasing food stamps for healthy foods such as fruits and vegetables. Now, with the drug testing issue, I recently read an article, and I forget which state it was, that passed a drug testing program in their state. But they only found less than 10 people and spent over several $1 million testing, random testing. I mean, and I don't know how big the state was and what the percentage was, but just a few people out of a whole state on the get welfare and food stamps that cost several $1 million. Is there a cost benefit to this? Now, maybe we can look at saying, all right, if we do drug test and we catch somebody, rather than take their food stamps away, let's put them in a counseling program. Let's give them drug treatment, which is one of the things that we talked about earlier. And that might be more effective by trying to eliminate the problem at the source. And I mean, it's not an easy answer because I know there has been a lot of states that have done this and it has been struck down as unconstitutional. But let's look at some of the other, let's wait and see how some of the other states do it. So we're not going to waste our money here in West Virginia and then try to use a model that's working in another state. And if they've already reinvented the wheel, we don't need to reinvent it. So I think that we need to move cautiously on this, but it is a good idea. We just need to make sure that we do it the right way to where we're not going to harm the children that are going to need to be sustained from their parents' food stamps.
I was just told from the back I should ask what you guys think. Should there be stricter limits on time you can be on these benefits, or should there be a certain amount of time before you're reevaluated? Do you actually need this? Are you trying to get back on your feet, or are you just taking the low out?
I would think that the Department of Health and Human Resources has a timeline as well as a reapplication process that you have to go through every so many months or years to make sure that you still need the benefits and that you aren't making enough money or that you're unemployed. But I don't have enough information to provide you any more information than that.
I'd have to go with the time, so I don't know if the specific time limits are for how long individuals can be on it. Mr. Manchin mentioned it's 18 months for...
I think it's roughly 18 months for adults, okay, who don't have children. It's when they have children, I mean, that cuts off when the children become 18, so, so there are some limits there, but the point's well taken.
I'd have to see what it is. I mean, if the question is getting to should this be, say, a lifestyle for individuals to live on for decades, then no. But I have to see what the actual limits are to address.
To answer that question, the limits on SNAP program, you are reevaluated every 6 months, and there is no limit on the number of years you can be on the SNAP, aka food stamp program. Since they changed the name, the welfare program is 18 months, and that's a different check, that's a different benefit, that's a whole different department of the Department of Health and Human Resources. So your question, they are reevaluated every 6 months. They're cross-examined with unemployment offices, child support offices for income, as well as now will be IRS and their tax department to determine what income, so that people who are kind of not telling the worker their income rate won't get through that again. But so they're reevaluated every 6 months unless you're on a fixed income, such as our senior population that gets disability or retirement benefit. I'm sorry, I was a worker, so I'm going to tell you that.
Great. Appreciate the help.
Thank you. Next.
In West Virginia, there's a 26.3% dropout rate, 25.3% average here in Taylor County over the last 5 years alone. These dropout rates around the nation even translate into a $1.8 billion loss in tax revenue every year. My question is, what can we do locally and nationally to help increase graduation rate, and what is currently being done to resolve the issue?
Well, we've been working with Judge Motes for the past several years on trying to bring down Taylor County's dropout rate, and we have done a fantastic job. We used to be number 1 and number 2 in the state. Now I think we're down in the double digits, in like 18 or 20. And one of the things that, we're taking this program across the state. Judge Motes has been going out and working with other communities and other circuit judges around the state to try to educate them as well as the communities on one of the ways that we can stem this problem. And starting in the early years of school, in primary and secondary school, one of the issues is chronic absenteeism. It starts out a few times a year, and then by the time they get into high school, there's some of the students that are missing 60 and 70 days a year. And that's a third or more of the school year. And how can students learn when they're not there over a third of the time? And when they aren't there, they're not learning. And then when if they do come back, they can't catch up. So we started mentoring programs. We did bring that into high school. It wasn't very popular here. We moved it into the middle school, and it's working very well there. I think that it needs to be jump-started again. I think that it has gone down a little bit since this program started. But the circuit judges have been working, and I think they've been fining or putting parents in jail for a few nights to wake them up, to make sure that they know that if they aren't accountable for their children, they're going to pay. And it has changed the tide here in Taylor County, and I think it's starting to around the state. But we do need to make sure that we're vigilant and we don't start to slip on this, because if it's starting to work now, we don't want to, lose our momentum. But we used to be number 1 in the state here for several years, and we dropped to number 2. And I'm very proud that we brought that back down to where we're in the middle number of the counties that has one of the lesser percentages of dropout rate in the country, or in the state. So, and then it's working.
It's dropout problems are there's so many things can cause it, and so many things we would hope would be able to address it. We talked a little bit ago about some education proposals in West Virginia, one of which these gentlemen, or at least Delegate Manypenny, mentioned supporting heavily was vocational education, career and technical education. One of the reasons I'm a big fan of that is because there've always been so many strong extracurricular activities that go along with that. And I think so often dropout problems are because people maybe don't have a support system at home that reinforces you need to going to school, the importance of going to school, and how that can help. But also, I think when students find a specific niche in school that keeps them there, sometimes it's just a special teacher, sometimes it's a class that they like, sometimes it's an after-school activity, or even an in-school activity, something that keeps them there. But I think career and technical education, because historically it's always been there are 10 student organizations, career and technical student organizations associated with that can help keep students in. But when it gets down to it, a lot of it goes to people stay in school because hopefully because of strong job opportunities. I think there's a huge link between our job opportunities that come with a high school diploma and whether people see the value in it. So a lot of it just goes to fixing the economy, and then as we've talked a lot about today, drug problems are rampant in a lot of rural areas, and that leads to our problems with dropout and absenteeism. But like Delegate Manypenny mentioned, the circuit judges are intricate in helping to prevent the dropout problem, and this has been an issue for a long time across West Virginia. We've got a very a problem in all 55 counties with it. But I just think that if we could strengthen our economy in a lot of ways, that helps support the value of education. And if mom and dad are working at home and they have something that they're working towards and they're striving for, then their children will emulate that. But that's a few steps. That's several steps to try and fix a very, very large problem.
Yeah, I think that they touched on it just briefly. I mean, you need enforcement of attendance at schools, and that's through attendance officers and through making parents accountable. That's a big piece of the step. The second one is providing you all with a good education that interests you. To some extent, some places, I know in Mon County, they've started to develop some teaching methods that show you the practical uses for the knowledge that they're trying to teach you. Instead of simply making you learn out of a book, it shows you how it can be helpful in your everyday life, and I think that's meaningful. And then the last one is we just can't let kids get behind. And one of the things we did recently was require that before they can move on in third grade, they have to pass certain reading efficiencies, I think. And we've got to keep kids, once they get so far behind, they're not going to be interested in school because they can't do well in school. So those are just quick thoughts on it.
Teachers expect a lot out of the student body as a whole, and if there's so much expected out of us, is there the same for the teachers? My question is, should there be more requirements once they get their degree in teaching, and once they're here, should they have to keep testing to keep their job and earn more?
Well, I don't know about testing per se. Certainly, teacher evaluations are something that we have had in the past and that we have worked on in the recent bill to perhaps improve the way in which we're accomplishing those evaluations and determining whether or not they're good teachers. Some of those things also tie into administration. Everybody says, well, you can't get rid of a bad teacher. Well, yeah, you can, but that takes a principal. It takes an administration that's committed to doing their job, to evaluating and listening and then getting rid of a teacher if they're not doing their job. So I think that they already are. I think you can argue about whether we're doing that in the best way that we can. I think we continue to try to come up with better ways to evaluate their performance. But yes, that's already a piece of it, and it needs to continue.
Like Delegate Manchin was saying, that there is a mechanism for removing teachers that aren't getting the job done. You just have to have the will behind the principal and the Board of Education and superintendent. I do believe everybody should be held accountable for their actions or inactions, and maybe there are some different ways to go about this. I know that the teachers are required to go through continuing education classes, and there may be some classes that could be taken on trying to improve their performance, which I'm not sure if that's part of the curriculum that they have to go through or not, but I think it should be. And then we can work from there and then look and see what's happening, what's working in other states.
Can I add to that, Mike? I'd like to talk about your questions. That's an important question right now, especially in education. I'm a master's in education, and I think it's important that you guys also understand that just like you guys are learning all this technology and trying to keep up with the differences in technology and learning math and English and science on the web base, guess what? We have to do that as well. Because I have to be able to teach you. And in order for me to teach you, I have to be a step ahead of you, correct? So it is important that as an educator, we stay on top of the things that affect your community at your level. So for example, look at what your teacher's doing right now. He's recording this. He can use this as a podcast to teach. It is up to us as educators to keep up with the current tools to teach. Now, whether certain teachers choose to do that or not, it depends on them. Some teachers love books. I personally don't like paperwork, so I want everything online because it's easier. But I like to read from a handheld book. So it all depends on, the strategy and the tools that we have accessible to teach you. We may not be ready to teach you 21st century learning because we're not capable to have internet in schools. So we have to use whatever we can do. But I think that our teachers, a lot of them, are prepared to do whatever it takes. Yes, we have to go to training. Yes, we have to keep up with certain degrees. It's not easy to be a teacher and teach you at the level where you need to be today because internet is changing so much and so fast, and you guys are multitask students. You do homework while you're on the computer, listening to music, texting somebody, and at the same time, you're Facebooking and trying to do homework. How do you compete with that? How do you compete with that? Oh, and watching TV. Because you got to have that stimulation in the background. But think about that for a second. That's 5 things. 5 things. That's a lot of work. Just talking about it, it's exhausting. But as an educator, we have to find the means to make that work for you as well. So I think that our teachers are trying to do that the best way that they can. And they're trying to cross over that threshold of technology to help you. Because our goal is to make sure that you are prepared for college when you get out of here. The last thing I'm sure that the teachers want to see is you graduate and not have the tools you need. Because how would you feel if you got into a college class and you can't even cite a page? So I think your teachers are there. And I think it's important for you to talk to your teachers and tell them that you don't understand or you're not comfortable with certain things, because if they don't know what your needs are, they don't know how to accommodate those. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in that.
I think she summed it up. I was thinking, I did my master's in education. I was thinking about it. I finished that 8 years ago, and that was before there were iPads, iPods, or anything else that started with I. So when you just said a teacher could do a podcast, basically, if I went back and did my master's in education again, it would be completely different than what I did the first time around. And this is just I'll never, one quick anecdote. I remember learning when I was in college, this teacher put on a history teacher put on the board, she said, here's a great research tool for you guys. This might come in handy. She wrote out, she said, copy this down, www.google.com. That's how quickly things change. I remember I learned Google from a chalkboard whenever, and that's not been all that long ago. So anyway, things change, and to get to the original question, teachers go through a lot of training in order to find out new tools and new techniques, and that there are evaluation processes in place that these gentlemen said.
Okay. I believe that a criminal who commits a crime should be punished equally for what he or she has done. Like if someone rapes or kills someone on purpose, they have to serve life without parole or get the death sentence. I feel that criminals get away with some things easier than others. My question is, what is your viewpoint on sentencing people to the death penalty, and when is this sentence to be used?
I'm pro death penalty, and I think it should be used in the most sparing of all circumstances, rarely, but the reason I'm for it is because I believe society should have the power to remove. And the death penalty in state court, West Virginia, we don't have the death penalty. We used to, and then it was declared unconstitutional, and then it was declared constitutional again. The Supreme Court does that sometimes, and we never adopted it again, but of course it does exist federally, so sometimes there are cases in West Virginia that involve that. You start off with asking questions about sentencing. I believe in equal punishments. I agree. But in terms of the death penalty question, I'm for that. I think there are a lot of reasons that individuals can say that they aren't. A lot of it goes to scientific proof, and obviously, under no circumstance should we ever put someone in that situation unless there's 100% chance, 100% known fact that they are the one guilty of the crime. But I do believe that in very rare and select circumstances, society should be able to punish by removal.
Well, with regards to your first point about punishing people equally, I don't necessarily agree with that, because what you're talking about is what we've adopted in a federal system that says that we've got these guidelines and you can't deviate from these guidelines, and this is what you get no matter what the circumstances were. And all that has done is put more and more and more people in prison. It has tended to put black people in prison far more than white people in prison because of the way they set up the guidelines with regards to some of the drugs. I think that we elect judges because they have wisdom. We elect judges because they can look at circumstances and determine when there are mitigating factors. Believe me, you're young, but as life goes through, especially when you have kids, they're going to do some things and you're going to look at, well, but you know, this is different. It's always different when it's yours. And sometimes it really is different, is the point. I mean, you know, the same crime can be done under very difficult different circumstances, and I think that justifies different punishments, and I think judges should have some leeway in which to determine that. I think that's who we trust to do it, and they're entitled to do that. I struggle with the death penalty situation. We do still have a problem with the way in which it is applied in the states where it has been reinstated. It does fall disproportionately on minorities, even those convicted of the same crimes as non-minorities. There still are problems, although a lot of the DNA problems are starting to clear up. But in this state, 10 years ago, we had a tremendous problem with our lab. We had people who were falsifying lab results. State police lab results were being falsified. So it's a long way, and okay, is it always going to be used for first-degree murder? Are you going to start separating out when it's a kid that's been killed or a policeman that's been killed? I don't know. All life is precious to me, and it's. The problem with it is that they never did prove that it deterred criminal activity. And I don't know. It's hard to go there. I'm not saying that I couldn't go there under certain circumstances. I'm just saying that there's still a few things that cause me concern and hold me back a little bit. So.
When I was younger, I used to believe in the death penalty because I thought it was a good way to deter other capital crimes. Statistically, like Delegate Manchin was saying, it hasn't been proven to be a deterrence. And even though we have a lot of this CSI stuff on TV and everything, and it shows there's all this technology, it isn't as far advanced as television shows that it is. And nothing is 100%. Just like Delegate Manchin mentioning where there was falsified documentation of evidence. You don't want to penalize somebody and put them on death row if there's a chance that they're innocent. And so the only way that I think that I would support death penalty again is if someone admitted to the crime and signed off on allowing it or to be put on, to have the death penalty on. But I don't think any other way that I'd support it.
I've noticed a lot in
issue. I know in the summer they were trying to crack down on it, writing tickets if you were caught texting or on your phone, but it's getting lenient again with law enforcement. I was wondering if there's anything the legislature can do to try to like make stricter guidelines or anything to stop the issue.
Well, like you, I've seen a lot of people texting and using their phone while driving. In fact, there's been times I've been guilty of using my phone mainly because I had an emergency. But there is some exceptions, I believe, with emergencies. However, the only exception I believe legally is to call law enforcement. The only reason that I did it was because there wasn't any place to pull over, and I try not to ever use it, but I admit I was guilty of it too. But I've had people driving left to center with their thumbs on the steering wheel, and it's obvious that they're texting. We do need to maybe stiffen the penalties, or look at ways. And now the new technologies with all the new cars, everything is hands-free. The only reason that I broke the law is because my smartphone got lost, and now I have a flip phone, and I had to utilize that. I think that as technology improves and expands with the newer cars, that there will be less people utilizing a hand device. But it's hard to really pinpoint and have law enforcement really crack down, because there's a lot of other things that they're responsible for, and they can't just be focusing on these issues too. Now, if it's obvious, then yeah, they should be pulling them over. I don't know if they're being lenient, or if they're just not catching people, or if people were just getting to be complacent, saying, well, they haven't caught me this long, I'm going to continue texting. It's a serious thing. People were still dying. I wish I had a better answer, but that is the best I can do on that.
The answer is no, there's nothing we can do to make them enforce the laws. We can pass all the laws we want, but the police have to enforce it. You have three different branches of government. You've got the judiciary, you've got the legislative, and you've got the executive. And law enforcement comes under executive, and that is carrying out the laws. And we can't change that. They've got to enforce it. If they turn the other way and don't want to, not much we can do about that.
No, really anything to add on that one other than, I think we can all hope that someday the worst thing that's happening out there for police officers to enforce will be texting while driving, and then that's what that is. I try not to, but I've been guilty of it in the past, and the only reason I even cut down on it massively was because they passed a law. So I hope that because the legislators took action on that's affecting other people, and that other people just want to do it. But hopefully that becomes the biggest problem we have someday.
It's not all rush up there at one time.
So, what is your standpoint on gun control, not only in West Virginia, but in the United States? Do you think it's different between the United States and the issue in West Virginia? And do you believe if we do have gun control, should it be on a certain type of gun and not on all guns? And also, what do you feel about background checks with guns?
We've got a bunch of them in there. I'm not sure I can remember all of them. Let me first say that I am certainly in favor of keeping guns out of the hands of those who have demonstrated.
Mr. Spatafore, if you are still here, please report to the office. Thank you.
Either mental problems that make them dangerous or criminal propensities, if they've been convicted. So that I think needs to be strengthened, and I think it can be strengthened. I think we should. With regards to whether or not, I'm an advocate of the right to bear arms and always will be. I think it serves an important safeguard, number one, for the safety of our people, but number two, it's a good check on government. What is included within a gun? Do I think a bazooka is? No. Should you be able to drive down the street in a tank? No. Where is that line? I have trouble figuring out what that line really ought to be. I mean, those are easy ones, but there are some that are more difficult than that in terms of firearms. Do I think that there is a difference between what we face in West Virginia versus what they face in downtown Detroit City? Sure I do. Does that mean that they need different laws to be able to regulate? I don't know about that. I certainly understand. I think unless I live through that, unless I live there, I don't really know how dangerous it is, and I don't know whether being able to do something with handguns would change that or not. From my standpoint, we don't have any issues that I think need to be addressed in this state other than perhaps tightening up some of the background. But we are doing reporting now of people with mental illness. That goes into the system primarily for a concealed weapons permit, not just for being able to buy, but it is being done. Did you have a follow-up? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Well, all right. Now, I've also been an advocate for gun rights. However, I'm not sure if we need fully automatic weapons on the streets. However, I don't see where there's a lot of crimes being committed with automatic weapons. So, does that mean that we need to outlaw automatic weapons? I don't know. The issues with some of the school shootings around the country, there may be ways to reduce some of these by putting in better security. We have a locked door system down here at the entrance of the school where somebody could walk through a metal detector prior to that door being unlocked and opened before somebody could come into the school, which would protect the students as well as the teachers. I think there's some solutions out there. However, I'm not sure if we need to trample on the Second Amendment rights. And as far as Delegate Manchin talking, excessive weaponry such as bazookas and tanks and whatnot, I saw somebody in I forget what magazine advertising incendiary ammunition, which creates a fire when the shell is ejected from the gun. Now, something like that, I think that may need to be regulated. However, we're a country of hunters, and a lot of people rely on going out and hunting for venison and rabbit to put food on their tables. It's a slippery slope, and if you start here, how far do you go? It's a very controversial issue, and it's very divisive between politicians and different states. But I don't know if there's an easy answer to that.
Handgun, yes. Tank, no. And everything else in between is, I guess, up in the air on that, so to speak. And we've all mentioned support of Second Amendment rights. I wouldn't strengthen what exists currently on the federal level. And here we are in West Virginia. Mountaineers are always free. We're a hunting culture. We're a sportsman's culture. We're a culture of great independence and a culture of self-protection. So I wouldn't expand certainly what exists now in terms of federal protections against that would restrict the Second Amendment, because I don't know how many laws you can put in place, but it's just not going to stop a homicidal maniac. It's not. I lived in New Orleans whenever Hurricane Katrina hit, and was there. I don't know how old you all are right now. That's been a while, and as you know, that was a vigilante, crazy, wild place, and that is the time that probably made me the most conservative as I could be on the Second Amendment, because I remember carrying a handgun at all times for a couple-month period, simply because you never knew what was going to happen. You could see on TV what was happening. I had a good strategy. I lived in the worst house in the best neighborhood, so all the people around me got robbed. I didn't, but everyone around me did, where they had to hire private security forces. You all probably heard of Blackwater. It was hired by the neighborhood association simply because of the violence in New Orleans, basically from August through about December, January of the following year. So in terms of protection and everything, law-abiding citizens need that option, and it shouldn't be restricted. But no, we don't need tanks on the streets operated by private citizens, and no one, I don't think, could argue that that's what the Second Amendment intended, or bazookas, or some of those. But then when it gets down to some of the specifics on guns, it's an I don't know gray area when it comes to certain types of artillery that individuals use. But I don't believe there should be any further restrictions beyond what currently exists.
Anybody else have questions to ask? I think we
Education is crucial to our becoming adults, but as high schoolers, we're at an age where dropout becomes an option. I know that things are already being done to change that and lower that, but I think that something needs to be done to hold the students' interest. What things can or are being done in West Virginia to keep those rates low?
We're going to defer to Mike. We've answered this question once before, so we'll let him summarize it. We weren't very different on it.
I'm not the expert on this, believe me. I'm not even on the education committee. But we've been working with Judge Moats, and he's been taking a program across the state and really worked to bring Taylor County into the fold, because we were number one for a long time for high school dropout. And I think we're down near the middle of the 55 now. And that's a major improvement. A lot of that is due to holding parents accountable. One of the problems is students early in primary and secondary school, as they miss a few days each year, they miss a few days more, to where it ends up becoming a chronic problem, and to where many of the students were missing 60, 70, 80 days a year, which is over a third of the school year, and they can never catch up. So we tried implementing mentoring programs, which has been somewhat effective, to try to help bring some of those students that have missed more days than they should have to catch back up. Because once a student falls behind and they're not at the same level of reading and arithmetic and science as the rest of the students, then it's almost an embarrassment to them. So they end up falling further and further behind, end up getting bad grades, and then end up dropping out. So better programs to help keep students up with their work through mentoring programs and or other student help, such as tutoring programs from your mentors. But we also talked about bringing more vocational education into the schools to try to give the students an option, if they're not going to college, to take up a new field of study to learn a trade when they get out of school. And those are some of the programs that we're working on right now.
There has been talk about the state of West Virginia going into an all-year-round school starting next year.
why would we go into an all-year-round school, and how will it affect the way the school and our breaks are run now?
It's a pretty specific question that the legislators may have more info on, but I tell you, year-round school has been talked about for a long time. You know, our calendar now is set up on based off of an agriculture culture from a long time ago. So it's, you know, there are benefits and detractions. I believe there are some schools in West Virginia that are school year-round now. I think there's one in Kanawha, I believe, that has. Yes, there's one in Kanawha that has, and I don't know the results of that, whether it's been positive or negative. But you know, it's something that's been tried around the country, and I believe that the one in Kanawha does build in for a break. Just the breaks come long. Their breaks are more frequent. It's not a summer break, but it's more frequent on that. A lot of the rationale behind year-round school is often because if you get out early June and they're back in, say, by Labor Day, there's a lot of learning that's lost. And a lot of times students are, there's not a lot of reinforcement that's done over the summer, so students lose a little bit. They have to get caught up to be where they should be on different levels. So that's the rationale of the year-round school. I'm not familiar with how that's played out in Kanawha. If you guys might have more info on that than I would.
I think that, and not being on the education committee, I just going by what I recall here, but I believe the way the program was set up was like 1 month or 2 months on and 2 weeks off. 2 months on and 2 weeks off. And for the reasoning that Conrad is talking about is because, with a couple of months off during the summer, you lose that momentum of learning that you had been having during the whole school year. And I think that the idea is to try to keep that momentum going so you can, have a better education, so you can learn more, so you can be more productive when you're graduated and be a better and more productive citizens in society. I don't know if it works. I'd like to know more whether it does or not before I would endorse it. But that's my impression of the program.
Unless I'm mistaken, the counties have already been authorized to do this. So it's out there, available for whoever chooses to explore it. They're correct. The only thing that I've ever heard is that yes, it's better in terms of you're not losing as much. Better for retention and better for building upon your previous knowledge instead of having that big long break. There's been some discussion, maybe it's a better use of school facilities, maybe we can handle more kids by doing it that way. I think we probably have just as many obstacles as that would enhance, because some of our schools are not air conditioned, so that's kind of where we stand. I haven't gotten to ask, what do you all think about year-round school? With the same number of breaks now, same number of days? Yeah, go ahead, Jim. Yeah, you. Yeah.
Okay. I'm a member of the 4-H program here in the county, and I know in that we have a great tradition of camping in it during the summer. So I think it would infringe upon that, not only in Taylor County, but across the state. Because if you don't know, West Virginia had the first state 4-H camp at Jackson's Mill. The first 4-H camp held in the summer was actually in Randolph County. So I think it would infringe upon that, and that's one reason I am very, very about it, because it could infringe upon that, and 4-H is a great building block for a lot of youth, and I don't want that program to be disrupted, and our camping program is one of the best things that we have to offer for that. So that's what I feel about it, and that's why I'm very rear of the year-round school.
Great. Yes, sir.
I think if you're trying to make it better for the individuals to learn, I think we need to look at how it's functioning now, and the fact that we have 50, 55-minute classes, and you go to each class each day, where I'd honestly rather see school for 5 hours a day, maybe even Monday through Saturday, but you only have one class a day, and you can keep building on that. You have math on Monday, your foreign language Tuesday, and so on and so forth, rather than struggle your first 40 minutes of class trying to grasp a new concept in math, and then be sent home not knowing what you're doing, come back tomorrow and be behind learning something new, when you could sit there and work through a class and make sure that everyone understands it in that time period.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that? Yes, sir. No one.
I will say that I work a summer job. I know most kids in high school do work summer jobs, so taking out and putting in a full year round of school will cut out on the summer jobs and give less work opportunities to young people.
Thank you. Other thoughts on that? If not, I'd like to back up on one. I wanted to ask you what you thought that we could do to help the dropout rate. Anybody with a thought? No? Well, we're puzzled too, but we're doing all that we can. We've had some ideas. And what do you all think in terms of vocational education? Are we doing a good job with that now? Do you feel like you have the opportunities that you'd like to have, or do you think they need to be expanded?
I feel like there should be more vocational education classes, because I know last year there was going to be a couple of them, but the teachers got cut from the program, so they could not teach the program that they were supposed to teach, because there was supposed to be an actual teaching class where we could go into the middle school and do 1 day a week or 2 days a week going to the middle school and actually teaching, because I want to be a history teacher, so I would like to do that, but the funding got cut, so we couldn't participate in learning to do that. So I feel like there should definitely be more funding for those programs, because I know there is a lot of kids that do like to do vocational education classes.
Have we talked, any other thoughts on that one?
Something to add about the dropout. Rather than have, it may not be, it doesn't sound exactly right, but rather than have everyone struggle trying to get one kid in a class that doesn't care, doesn't have any motivation to learn, doesn't want to learn, already is set on the fact that he doesn't care about school, rather than have the teacher spend the whole class time, slowing things down, saying you need to learn this, and they still don't care to. And when they know they're going to drop out when they turn 18, or they are already, that's bringing the rest of the class down. Really, they are slowing the rest of the class down from learning, and not furthering them for college or beyond learning education, when they're really, your class is only as good as your worst student. When if you're a worst
what
student,
do you want to do with it?
if they're already 18 and their choice is to drop out, there's a lot of money going towards trying to stop dropping out, and I understand that people graduating do make more money for it, but it's less competition for people who are graduating, even because say you have a class of 200 students with 150 graduating, 50 dropping out, then there's those 150 are more inclined to get jobs, and it's sad to say, but if that's a choice you want to make in your own life, then that's your decision to make. You can't have somebody to make that choice for you, and if you force it on them, then they're still going to have the same mindset and motivation.
So when they're 16, we should let them drop out too?
No. Just if you're 18, you're willing to decide that you want to go and serve in the military or smoke tobacco and cigarettes all day, that's your own choice. You're considered an adult. You can be trialed as an adult. You should be able to make your own decisions for yourself.
And forgive me if I'm taking a few moments here, but I learned something by coming and listening to you all. I don't learn anything by me talking. Maybe you learned something from it, maybe you don't. But we touched a good bit on drugs and also on medical marijuana. Do y'all have any thoughts about how we can curb substance abuse, drug use, and whether or not we should allow medical marijuana? Any thoughts? Anybody? Bashful? Okay. Fair enough. Any other? Y'all have some more questions? I had to take a few minutes and get some of your all's thoughts. Probably should have done that a little earlier today. But yes, sir. You and the turquoise?
I was going to say about the vocational schools and such, that I feel like if we had more vocational opportunities, that less children would drop out, because then they'd find a reason to come to school and it'd be their muse. Like I personally know children who were like, I'm going to drop out of school, I'm not going to graduate, that's stupid. And then they found like a woodworking class or something, and they were like, now I think I know what I'm going to do with my life. So I feel that if we had more vocational opportunities, like I've personally tried to get into some photography or journalism class in the school, and we only have 2, and both of those opportunities went out the window because I had to take other classes. So I feel like if we had more people teaching, and we had more opportunities, then the dropout rate would also plummet.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
I'll just have one thing.
Okay. Sure. We're ready. I got my questions out. I didn't ask you guys if you wanted to ask any questions. I'm sorry.
I just want to talk about smoking in general. Like, I feel like smoking in public places should be banned. I feel that if you want to smoke on your own terms in your own house, that's your right. But secondhand smoke is actually worse than smoking the cigarette itself. So when you're smoking on the streets and there's children walking on the sidewalks, you're affecting more than one person. You're affecting a family or even, a younger child. And smoking in workplaces has actually already been banned, but I don't really see that being enforced. Like, especially at fast food restaurants, you see how many people go on smoke break and they're all lined up on the corner of the side of the building. So I just want to know what you guys have thought about enforcing the laws or even the current laws that we have on smoking.
I guess I appreciate your thoughts about others being exposed, but it seems to me like we've gone probably as far as we need to go. I think they're required to be outside. They're banned from a certain distance from public buildings, as I recall. I know that I think WVU now is a smoke-free campus, so there's nowhere where you can smoke. So maybe it seems to me like I don't smoke and never have. I personally have not been bothered outside by somebody else's smoke. Now maybe I'm just not sensitive enough, but I don't know. It seems to me like I kind of think we've gone far enough. but maybe there's some other areas we don't.
Well, currently the legal age to buy alcohol is 21, but it's 18 to buy cigarettes. So I just feel like maybe that's something that we could consider too.
Yeah, but tell me what y'all think about tanning beds. Do you think you ought to be allowed to be in a tanning bed when you're under 18?
I don't.
All right. Well, since I can, all of us girls do for homecoming and prom. Let's not say that we don't, because we do. But I do think I'm 18 and now, so it doesn't matter. But I guess I feel like it would be fun. I like that it's 18. I think you should be 18 to do it, whether you have parent consent or not to tan. Because my parents don't agree with it. So I definitely think that you should be 18 to do it. I don't think you should be younger at 16. I don't think that you should be allowed to do it.
Great. And I didn't get to pass on the mic, but you and the blue had your hand up for a second. Did it relate to her question?
What do you guys? Where do you stand on laws with parents smoking cigarettes in their car with their infants in the back seat? I see it every day, and it's honestly, we're all aware nicotine and cigarettes, they all contain things that are killing people, and the people who are smoking are obviously aware of it. They don't seem to care, but how is it fair to their infant child in the back seat who...
I'm absolutely opposed to that. Yes, that's a secondhand smoke that I can't live with and wouldn't condone. I'm not sure whether... I don't think we have any legislation that covers that at the moment, but that's certainly something that I could support. I think that's... Being in an enclosed space is clearly too much secondhand smoke for anybody should be exposed to, especially a child that can't stand up for themselves on that issue.
That's a great comment, because you took the wind out of my sails. That was one of the things that I was going to discuss next. But I have already introduced down in our legislative drafting a request for a bill to do just what you said. So we're going to at least maybe look at it. I don't know if we'll be able to take it up this year. But it will at least create some debate, and we'll see where the legislature goes with it, because we do have over 2,000 pieces of legislation introduced every year, and we're lucky to get through maybe 200 if we're lucky. So usually about 10% of it gets addressed, and most of them are very good and effective pieces of legislation. It's just you can't deal with everything that is presented to you. So sometimes it takes several years before something gets passed. And back to your question, it is hard for us to do anything because most of this, the smoking regulations are done on a local basis and through the health department and the local law enforcement. One of the issues that I've always had is I felt, I don't smoke, but if I'm in a restaurant where there was smoking, I had the right to leave that restaurant and not have to deal with it if I didn't want to be there with the rest of the smoke. So I mean, I'm sort of on both sides of the fence because I was a smoker at one time and I'm very sensitive to smoke now, and I don't like to even be around it or even within 20 feet of it because it makes me nauseous. But I feel that, we're stepping on too many rights, and if somebody goes into a restaurant or maybe a bar, I mean, not a restaurant, but and there's smoking going on, I have the right to leave that restaurant. Nobody's forcing me to be there. So I think we may have gone a little bit overboard on some of the regulations, because some of the restaurants and bars were able to partition areas at one point in time to have a non-smoking and a smoking area. And I'd go into a restaurant in Morgantown that had proper ventilation. It would suck the smoke out before you even knew there was anybody smoking. So, I mean, there's two sides of every story, and I mean, I understand the reason why they're doing this, to try to improve health, because we have one of the highest rates of asthma in the country, as well as other pulmonary issues. But it's my right to be there or not, and I think that we maybe overstepped that a little bit.
I agree with Delegate Manypenny on that, particularly when it's just adults that are involved, when you're already going into an age-restricted place, say a bar, where to be in the place you have to be 21. Then I think that you're only affecting other adults, and they're there by choice, and they are smoking by choice, and it's their right to do that. I could go along with the legislation you were discussing involving children because they have no choice involved in this. But when it comes down to adults doing a legal activity in places where others are only there by choice, I don't think that should have a restriction.
I think we're going to go ahead and finish up right now. I want to thank you all for coming in. It's been very enjoyable. Students had some great questions. And one more thing, perhaps.
Yeah, we have one more question. Some of us want to know your stance on abortion, and as in, is it okay in the case of a woman being raped, should she have the option to get the abortion? And also, if the child has some issues going on with the development phase, should she have also the right to that abortion, or should abortion just be totally outlawed? Or what case should it be okay and what case should it not be okay? I know it's a good question.
Well, first of all, I've always been opposed to abortion. However, I want to have it both ways. I also believe that a woman should have the right to choose. One of the reasons it's kind of hard to understand why I can walk on both sides of this fence. When I was growing up, we lived right across the river from East Liverpool, Ohio, which was a big city to me, probably 20,000 people. And as a young child, I remember walking to go shopping with my mother and my aunts. They dragged me along. And walking past some alleys, there was a girl lying in the alley, and we really didn't think much about it. But in the newspaper the next day, this young girl who probably was about 16 years old died from what's called a back alley abortion. And they used coat hangers to remove the fetus. And this was before Roe versus Wade. And it's a horrific thing for anybody to go through. The reason why the girl died, and that made an impression on me. And the reason why she went and had this abortion, because she didn't want her parents to know. And so reproductive rights is important for women, but it's not my place to tell them what they can and can't do. I mean, like I said, I'm opposed to abortion, and I think we need to do everything we can in our power to reduce the amount of abortions that are going on in the country, in the state of West Virginia. And a lot of that has to be done through education and through trying to stop teen pregnancy. Because I would say the biggest percentage of them, at least back then, and I think it probably still is now, is young people. And nobody wants their parents to know that they got pregnant or that they're having sex. And so what happens is, we end up losing lives. I mean, the American Indians had used herbs to induce abortion. And it's been going on since the dawn of time. And, I mean, like I said, I'm opposed to it, but we also have to look at the health of the woman and the mother, or potential mother. And a lot of times there may be health issues to where a woman can't conceive properly, and then her health is at risk, or her life is at risk, and she has to go through an abortion. I think we've taken some very proactive steps in trying to eliminate late-term abortions after the first trimester, and to try to educate women by offering them a ultrasound prior to getting an abortion. And we're looking at ways to not step on the rights of the woman, but also to try to preserve the life of the child. I mean, it's one of the toughest issues that we deal with as legislators and as citizens. And we need to do everything we can to try to eliminate abortion, but if we do, then we're going to go back to the times, archaic times, before it was legal, and there's going to be girls dying in alleys in their homes because of the archaic conditions of illegal abortions. I don't know what else I can say, but it's a horrible thing for a woman to go through, but we need to at least provide options.
There are parts of my opinion that are very clear and some that remain a little unclear to me in life, but clearly with regards to incest, rape, and the life of the mother, I believe abortion should be legal. Once you agree with that principle, though, what you've now recognized is that it is a balancing act. You are balancing the rights of the unborn fetus with the rights of the mother. And where to set that balance in every situation, I think perhaps needs revisited at times. But right now, the law of the land, the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade has declared that a woman has that right. And until they re-examine it and determine scientifically other things than what they considered the last time around, it's still the law of the land. And so that's pretty much the way I look at it. And I look at every issue, every law that relates to abortion on an individual case-by-case basis. And I look at the language and look at the issues solely there, as opposed to simply I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice, because morally and religiously I'm opposed to abortion, but what we do from a civil society standpoint is not necessarily my religious beliefs. So those are my thoughts.
I'm opposed to abortion, except in cases where the mother's life is at risk. You asked a question about, I don't think we should be, I don't think that the procedure itself should ever be outlawed, though. Some in the pro-life community would go as far as saying the procedure itself should be outlawed, but for instances that Delegate Manypenny stated, I don't think the procedure itself should be. Remember when you first asked the question, you were talking about developmental issues with, say, a fetus. Say if someone was going to have Down syndrome, I don't find that a justification for an abortion at all. I don't think that we should be picking and choosing the value of which lives have value whatsoever. But in the case where if the mother's life is at risk, I believe that is the one time in which a choice should be she should be able to make that choice.
I guess that wraps us up.
Thank you all very much for having us.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.